Yeah, it's Adnan, baby. You knew that though.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's extra special episode of Pursuit of Motion. We are joined by Zoey Phillips. I'm not going to give a less than optimal explanation of who this wonderful lady is, so I'm going to let her tell you who she is and what we're doing today.
Hi, so it's a great opportunity to sit down with Adnan. Today I think it'll be a different speed. We're just going to talk about you and a little bit less of the motion. More of a pursuit of backstory, maybe. Adnan, I have to say, the first thing that jumps out at me is that you were born in Turkey. Can you elaborate on how your family moved to Canada? Maybe your history in Turkey leading up to the move?
Sure, yeah, and I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but yeah. Born in 2001 in Turkey, in Bodrum. So that's on the west coast, south of Istanbul by like 8 hours. My dad grew up in a village in Turkey, so he didn't grow up in the city. And my mom was from Scotland originally.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of travel of people from Great Britain and that area to Turkey. It's a very popular vacation destination. And so my dad was working on the boats as a ship captain at the time. And my mom went and visited there. And then, long story short, they fell in love and I happened. And so we were in Turkey until I was 5 years old. And the thing about Turkey is it's not a third world country by any means, but it's definitely not the same as North America in terms of opportunity or education or healthcare or other sorts of amenities. So my grandparents lived up in northern Alberta and they were working in industry. And so my parents decided for the good of the family, they should immigrate to Canada and, give us that opportunity to educate ourselves and really, pursue motion, right, in a way that really wouldn't have been possible back in Turkey.
So did your grandparents immigrate from Scotland to northern Alberta?
Yeah, so they lived in multiple places through their life. They were in South Africa, they were in the UK, and I'm sure other places as well. But yeah, my grandpa was working in the forestry industry at the time. And so it was an opportunity for my parents to come and, experience a new sort of life.
Okay. I find it interesting, like the culture shock you must have experienced as a 5-year-old. Can I ask, is like English one of your first languages or?
Yeah, so I can speak Turkish, not super fluently, but certainly I pick it up really quickly when we go back.
Okay.
But really, I don't think the culture shock was that massive for myself, being that my mom was Scottish, so we would have been speaking English and Turkish in the household as a child. But really, for my dad is where the big culture shock would have been, because outside of Turkey and Greece, I'm not sure he had ever traveled. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was a particular culture shock for me, no.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
Okay, and how old was she when you moved?
3.
3. So that's not so bad, I guess.
Not so bad.
Do you remember Turkey or no?
So we've been back a couple times, so I'm blessed to have reconnected with family as I grew older, and sort of that allows like memories to unlock in a way, like, oh, you're the cousin I used to run around with when I was 4 or whatever at the park. So yeah, I wouldn't say I have a lot of memories of that, but it is definitely where I'm from.
No, absolutely. And how did like other people react? Like, how did the surrounding children react when you moved from Turkey to Canada? Did people grasp like where Turkey was? Was there like maybe some prejudice, or was it like a more old-fashioned Canadian reception?
Yeah, I don't want to discredit my classmates too much, but certainly I think when you tell a bunch of 6-year-olds that their new classmate is from Turkey, the common joke is like, aha, gobble, gobble.
Yes.
And then that being in a very small town in northern Alberta, very, very small, that sort of just carries on. It's kind of tough to move past that, I guess. Like, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And so, when your first impression is, oh, well, this guy's an immigrant. Gobble, gobble. I don't know. I don't want to paint like a picture like I experienced significant racism. I know that there are a lot of people that would experience things that I could never even imagine. So, like, I don't want to say there was significant prejudice, but certainly it's kind of tough to be like, hey, yeah, I'm from the Middle East.
Well, I imagine you were like the only probably immigrant in your class, and maybe one of the only people with a Middle Eastern background.
I think you might be right. To be
Which,
honest, there were definitely other immigrants, but I think for the most part they would have been Filipinos.
okay,
And from there, yeah, Middle East, I'm not so certain there was anybody. In other years, yes. Like in my sister's grade when we were younger, there were a few students. And then I believe that a few years older than me there were some as well, but we were quite diffused, to say
right.
the least.
Did you find like did your family um like what did they even initially just feel happy that they moved to high water, or was there some regret?
Yeah, it's high level.
Oh, high level.
Yeah, and there's this funny story. So before my parents moved, they did one trip where my sister and I were still in Turkey, and they came to visit around Christmas time, visit my grandparents. And this Turkey is a Middle Eastern country. It's not particularly cold. There are some
Yeah.
parts that get snow, but for the most part, it's not snowy at all. And so my dad told me this story when I was young, but they went on a walk from their house to whatever, a coffee shop or a this is movie rental time, like Blockbuster time, so
Right.
maybe they went somewhere like that. But he had a bottle of water, and by the time they left the house and got to their location, the water bottle was frozen, and so that would have been like a big change for
Yeah.
them. But I don't know. I can't. The work opportunities. There was a 6 month gap between when my dad was able to leave Turkey and when my mom left because it was her parents. They were married, but my dad's particular skill set as a ship captain aren't really particularly
Yeah.
applicable in northern Alberta. And so there was a gap period before he was able to come as well. But um, I would say the opportunity in Canada so heavily outweighs the opportunity in Turkey that it's kind of you take the good with the bad. You're kind of making that sacrifice for the
Well,
family.
I almost feel that when you're like the immigrating generation, you don't even see the like you don't even expect the benefits to be like your experience. You do it maybe on behalf of your children and your grandchildren. Do you think, well, here's my next question is like how did you get from northern Alberta to St. Francis Xavier? Like how'd you hear about such a small school in Nova Scotia, and how did you select it?
See, it's such a small school, but it's also so massive in the hearts and minds of the alumni and the people who have graduated. And so, really, I'm the first in my family to go to university. Well, that's not true. I have some older cousins that are
I understand
highly
though.
technical, but in my branch of the family, and I had no intention of going to university whatsoever. I didn't want to get liberalized. I didn't want to learn. I didn't want
Oh,
to deal with any of that. Right, Northern Alberta guy working in forestry. I was like, nah, I don't want to go
well,
learn
actually,
any of that.
speak more to that. So, in high school, were you working in forestry?
Yes, yeah,
Doing what? Like, describe that.
yeah. So my work experience started a little bit earlier than others. I think the law is you have to be 14 to start working in
Yes.
Alberta, and I don't know if that's across Canada, but I got a job in October of 2014 when I was 13, going on 14
Okay.
at Tim Hortons. So I had like
That's pretty
two.
young for a corporation.
Well, they were just opening. There was like first Tim Hortons came to high level. Like this is a small town of
It's
3,000
like when
people.
McDonald's opened in the USSR.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, this is
What an
here now.
occasion. Okay,
Exactly.
continue.
But yeah, so I started my work experience there, and then my dad was in the sawmill in the forestry industry for the whole time we were in Canada. And so at 16, he pretty much called me and was like, "Hey, are you ready to come to the sawmill? Like, are you
Wow.
are you grown? Are you ready?" And
It's
I
like
was like, "Yeah,
Brian
let's do it."
Mulroney.
Well, yeah,
That must resonate with you. Do you know the quote? It's
yeah, it's
the only way out of like a mill town is through university doors.
that's
Maybe I
exactly it.
butchered it. Oh.
No, that's exactly it. The only way out of industry is through education, is the sentiment of his quote. And that stands true for me. But yeah, at 16, I got in the sawmill and I learned a lot of skills, like especially forestry industry is, I believe, the third most dangerous industry to be
I
in.
could see
Like
it.
it's oil and gas, it's military, and then it's forestry. So I learned at a pretty young age to be responsible in an environment where the stakes are really high. You can get hurt.
Who were you working alongside? Like, were you the youngest or?
So at that age, we were on the weekend crew, and so that was weekend cleanup. So there's all sorts of sawdust and broken boards and wood laying around that needs to be cleaned in order for production to operate through the week. So it was me and a few other high school students, all being led by one, weekend supervisor, and there was a lot of shenanigans that that went on for certain. But like I said, we did learn quite a few skills in safety and in being aware.
Did you also like maybe get a window into the alternatives not going to school? Like, you see what your life could look like a bit?
100%, yeah. And I mean, the trades are so fruitful, and especially the further north you go, the more fruitful they are. Well, we were at the peak of northern Alberta right before the Northwest Territories. So you've got people that, for the most part, didn't pursue secondary education, that right out of high school, if they even finished high school, went into the trades. And so there's a lot of people with nice vehicles and boats and nice house and a family at a decently young age, like the dream. But also there's a certain energy of like, I hate this place.
Yeah.
I hate what I do. There's a negativity that hangs around, at least in the specific firm that I was working for.
Well, it does seem like it's really good going when you're young, and quickly when you're like 40, you need to retire. But you can't. That's what I see is like the trades definitely have like a honeymoon phase where you are out of high school and you have all this money, but it takes a toll. So what like intervened in your life where you decided to go to university?
Yeah, so COVID, really.
Okay.
Right after high school, I went to Edmonton, Alberta and pursued an audio engineering degree, sort of in a trades like program. It wasn't exactly a whole university or anything like that, but I took that 6-month program. I wrote my final exam, which I got 100% on, by the way.
That's nice.
And then later on that week was when lockdowns were announced. Like,
Okay,
it was
but
like
you would have
magic.
been so young when you're doing this then. Because you
I would have been 17, 18, yeah.
Wouldn't you have been? Because you're 2001?
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Continue.
Yeah, so after I finished the schooling, the thing about the forestry industry is that it is an essential service.
Okay.
If you think about all forget about the use lumber has in building. Think about the byproduct. You're creating wood chips, you're creating sawdust. Well, that goes into tissues, paper towel, paper, masks. And so the sawmill and the forestry industry were essential service. So again, I had that great opportunity. My dad spent all of his years in Canada working for this same company, a company that I cannot speak very highly of, unfortunately, but they did give us opportunity, and so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, he said, the city's shut down, everything's unsafe, you might die, right? This is April 2020. And he said, come back up north, come work. And I said, no, I want to be a rapper. I'm in the city, I'm making music. But, there weren't any other options. And so I went back up north. And then I spent 3 years. I spent 3 years working in the sawmill, working my way up the hierarchy, learning the tools of the trade. I hesitate to be presumptuous, but I probably have the most chainsaw experience out of every student at STFX. It's likely I've spent the most time with a chainsaw in hand. And during that time, I used to always get in debates with a teacher of mine who I met in high school. And he's what you would call a mentor in my life. There's no other way to put it. And we used to always argue about anything, you name it, politics, getting vaccinated, the merits of certain influencers, you name it. We would argue about everything, and I would always lose. There was just no possible chance that I could win. And so after a few years of getting my ass kicked, being in a comfortable situation, and when I say comfort, I mean financially, I was comfortable. I was working a full-time job in a fruitful industry. I bought a home in Edmonton so that my little sister could go to university, she went to like a nail tech, like to be an esthetician. So she did that work, and I
You bought a house when you were how old?
I would have been 19 at the time. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
you still own this house?
No, God, no. No, I had to sell that in order to come to school.
I understand.
And like I didn't buy a house outright. Like I put down a down payment and I was making payments every month just to kind of maintain that. But yeah, I ended up losing so many debates, but being in a position where I had comfort, that I learned comfort isn't everything. I can do this for the rest of my life, and I can continue to lose these debates. I can continue to be less educated than I otherwise should be, or I can take the step, get an adventure in, and learn something new. And so when I decided to apply for university, I only applied here because that's where my mentor went. He came to St. FX, and I said, if this guy's always kicking my ass in debates, I want to go learn where he learned from.
So, your high school teacher, did you just stay in touch after high school then?
Yeah.
And are you still in touch?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Shout out to Tyler Ross. We're gonna have an episode soon. But yeah, no, we stayed in touch. And also, so my girlfriend, I've been with Emma for 6 years now, and he taught at both of our schools. We were at two different schools, but he taught at mine for a year, and then he moved over and taught at hers for the rest of the time. I'm not so certain how we remained in contact, but we did. Like he lived in the same town I did and commuted to the other school. But yeah, no, I didn't even. What's funny is when I wanted to apply here, my grades weren't high enough. I had to actually upgrade through high school just to paint the picture of I didn't really care in high school. I knew that I wasn't going to university. I knew I wasn't going to deal with all the liberal nonsense. And I'm going to keep bringing it back to that because really that is the mindset I was in at that time as a, ignorant young 16, 17-year-old.
I understand, but actually, I don't want to be redundant, and I don't want to change too much, but because I don't want to be redundant because I saw you did a podcast episode with Emma already, but that's kind of cool that you have been together with your girlfriend for 6 years and you both moved from high level to Antigonish.
Yeah.
Was that what motivated her move? Was it to be alongside you? She also want to go to St. FX?
She knew she was going to St. FX way before I did.
That's interesting.
From the same influence as well, Tyler Ross, because he was teaching at her school. She knew the quality of this place. She understood what comes with the X-Ring and what comes with the experience. And so at the time, it was looking like she was going to go her way and I was going to go my own. We were too young to verbalize anything like that. Like we would have been... What would have been
the diversion? Like you would have stayed in high level?
Yeah, I would have stayed in industry, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
But like I said, it just, her coming here, her already planning to come here, plus his influence of being able to, speak circles around me was enough to pull me here for sure.
It's interesting. So you weren't even motivated to change your career. You just wanted to educate and you just wanted to participate in a university.
Literally, yeah. I was pursuing education, and I mean, the first thing that I did when I got here to Antigonish, there's a sawmill 15 kilometers out of town. I drove myself there, and I shook the hands of the boss, and I said, I love the forestry industry. I love sawmilling. I'm a student here, and I intend on pursuing this industry beyond school. Can I come work for you? Now, I'm no longer employed by them. It was some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. The mill, just a little bit of context. It was built in 1910. The mill from here, and I swear some of the technology is the same as existed back then. It was truly backbreaking labor. So big shout out to the guys working there. None of you are ever gonna see this, but you guys are doing the real work.
Well, they probably this building. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But yeah. And I would say I don't think that the forestry industry is something that I'm as obsessed about now that I've learned about different opportunities and really university is about expanding your worldview. What sort of student would I be if 2.5 years have gone by and I still am like, oh, let's throw myself back into the same environment when I leave. It's about growth for me.
Do you feel like you have a gratitude to it because it it gave your dad that footing in Canada, and then it was able to you were able to benefit at different points in your life?
Yeah, no, I love it. Like, I couldn't speak more highly about the industry. I couldn't speak more highly about the process. I have a particularly negative experience with one firm, and so it's kind of easy to say, well, that company didn't exactly treat my family with respect towards the end of our professional relationship, but that doesn't have anything to do with the industry or with, the people within it as well. Like, one bad apple doesn't need to spoil the bunch. So, yeah, no, there's huge gratitude. I mean, I wouldn't be half the man I am today in terms of maturity or competence if I wasn't working in those environments. I wouldn't have had I wouldn't have been blessed with the amazing childhood that my family was able to provide for me if that industry didn't exist and take them in. And I learned advanced first aid in that industry. I learned management skills in that industry. I'll never forget the first time I had to rush somebody to the first aid room because they got significantly injured and I was the
Right.
one to help them. But all those experiences have built me into who I am today. The confidence, the the yeah, I just want to say, I matured in that context for sure.
I am curious as well because you ran a project pitch, is that what it's called?
Project pitch, yes.
And you kind of tease in one of your posts that you weren't always so confident and adept at public speaking. What was that like growth like for you? What was it, you working in the forest industry so young? Was it you like maturing? Like why, first of all, describe maybe like the shyness that you had before and maybe like the difficulty you had public speaking, and then what happened?
Sure. So I was not a popular kid growing up, like to say the least. I definitely was one of those kids that was like, oh, I'm super anxious. Everyone hates me. It doesn't help that, there was that certain, the Middle Eastern guy, but I wasn't particularly confident. That's for damn certain. And there were certainly questions of like self-worth a lot as a young person, maybe even leading up to senior high. I think around grade 10 is when I started to come into myself a little bit more. But I remember vividly my first ever experience of like stage fright. So grade 5 was a music class, and in northern Alberta, the resources are not abundant when it comes to education,
Mm.
and so there was no music or anything as a kid. And then just middle school, grades 4, 5, 6, there was music class, and then there was none in high school after that. But there was a school choir, and in the fifth grade, there was a song that had like a 30-second rap part, like just like one little smidgen of a rap part, and obviously it's a grade 5 thing, like it wasn't inappropriate by any degree. And I put my hand up, I said, oh, I want to do the rapping, and this was before I knew I wanted to be a rapper, of course, like 5th
Yeah.
grade. But I said, oh yeah, I would love to do the rap part. And then this would have been like, just for the sake of the story, this was a Monday, and then on the Thursday we had another meeting with the whole group, like the choir. And excuse me, the instructor said, oh, are you ready to perform it? Or have you memorized it, the song? And I said, yes. And she said, okay. And she turned the song off and said, go.
That's one way to learn.
Well, no, I was super uncomfortable with it, and I
Yeah.
froze and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so she said, oh, well, you're not going to be ready. We're assigning another person to do the part with you. So it was 2 people doing the one person's part. And that was a moment for me that, like, I felt like you can't ever do that again. You can't miss that opportunity again, because now look, your moment to shine was gone. And then from there, like, I wouldn't say that that was a life-changing moment in that I never missed another opportunity, but that was the first time that I can recall stage fright or performance anxiety holding me back from something that I wanted to do. And then from there, like, yeah, just being kind of rebel without a cause maybe through junior high and going through that angsty, resentful phase, and you know what I mean, getting in a few scuffles and not feeling like I fit in. But started putting out some music at the time, and it's not exactly something that is particularly well received when somebody starts something new, especially when everybody already has an idea of who they think you are, and then you say, I'm trying something new, it's, especially in such a small environment, it's easy to turn on that person. So I wasn't, I, I don't want to speak ill of my classmates, of course, but I wasn't in a position where people thought I was cool, or where I felt like I had a voice, or where I felt like anything I did mattered. But there were these rappers that were so cool, and they're all these black sheep. They're all these guys that don't care about what other people think, and I wanted to be cool like that, and so I decided to pursue music. And then that's where that maturity comes in, being willing to present, because as I practiced my skills, as I became better at rapping, I realized I have a skill that other people don't have, and it would be a shame if I didn't both pursue it and present it abundantly. And so really it just came with preparation and confidence, and or confidence came with preparation and with learning that you get better with time, you know?
What age were you like when you started? Well, actually, what age when you started pursuing rap, and what age when you started sharing it?
Yeah, so the first rap song I ever heard was Not Afraid by Eminem. I was
Yeah.
10 years old. I stole my dad's iPod, and I grew up in a very, like, non-religious, but a very, like, there's a proper way to do things. You don't curse. Table manners are a big deal. You know, there was structure in my home, to say the least. And so cursing was a big no-no, and I stole my dad's iPod, and I had the headphones in. And I heard Not Afraid, and I cried. I cried because the cursing, I was like, oh, this is so
Oh,
bad. But then the next day, I snuck into his room and I grabbed that iPod and I really listened. And I just fell in love. And so at around 13, 14 was the moment that I said, all right, like this, I feel this rhythm in my heart. Like this means something to me. And so I started telling people I was a rapper. And I used to rap like other people's verses. Like, you know, take a rapper, learn his song, and then tell my friends, look at what I made. You know what I mean?
sure.
And as a kid, you can get, like, if I did that now, that would be horrendous. But as a
But yeah.
13, 14-year old, it's kind of like, what do you expect? But I think around 15 is when I wrote my first song. Um, and then I wasn't shy about presenting it from the first song, because other people wouldn't do it if you paid them to. So if I'm comfortable doing it, if I care about it, then I got to be willing to present it, I guess.
I
If that makes
understand.
sense.
Who like were your early who inspired you? What rap artist maybe did you look up to?
Yeah, so Eminem's got to be a huge influence, and that's the typical one. Everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, this guy, listen to Eminem. But really, I mean, think about the time period, 2010, 2011. This is his biggest run. I think he dropped a diamond album around that time. Like, so he was a huge inspiration, as well as Lil Wayne. And then, but the biggest inspiration as far as music goes is a Vancouver-based rap artist named Madchild. Now, Madchild was part of a group called Swollen Members. Swollen Members won 4 Junos in Canada in the early 2000s. They were really big. Like, if you ask your parents about Swollen Members, they'll know who they are.
I
But
see.
people our generation wouldn't know, unfortunately. But Madchild was just the coolest. He was just the coolest. And so that's my biggest influence. I learned all of his music. I still know, like, so much of his music. And I got the great opportunity to perform, like, open for him in 2019 as well, in a show in Edmonton, which is huge. Like, at 17, I got to cross a major milestone off my bucket list that I got
That
to
is
perform.
crazy. Your rap career is really interesting. It's Do you want to explain, I don't know if you're able to, what was your involvement in like limo tent and like that
Oh,
movie?
yeah.
So you moved to what age were you when you moved to Edmonton, first of all?
Yeah, so I moved out at 17 to go to
Okay.
school there. And so the studio that I was going to school in at the time, it was it was a fully operating studio. So there were guests and clients that were coming in, and at one point there was a set of clients that were working on a movie, Frame 2.0 Productions.
Okay.
And so they're based in Edmonton. There are a few nurses, I believe, that had saved up and taken the time that they wanted to create a movie. And these were two, I don't want to mess it up. I believe they're Malaysian, but I could be wrong. But they're people who really loved Bollywood movies, and they loved they loved that from, their old life, and they wanted to bring a sort of new twist on Bollywood movies in using modern, like, North American music and creating a movie around that. And so they had met me in the studio, and they had appreciated whatever input that I had given them on the project they were working on, and they had asked me to show them my music, and so I did. And a little while goes by, and all of a sudden I get a message to my phone, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for a rapper to create a few songs for our movie. And our intention is, make us these couple songs to fit specific scenes in mind. And then we want to shoot a big music video to promote the movie." The intent was the movie was going to come out on all streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that kind of stuff. And so I did it. Yeah, I coordinated with a whole bunch of different people, like the director, executive producer, and then also they had a dance. They had like a whole dance team. Obviously, it's Bollywood music, so coordinated dances and everything is a big part of it. But essentially, we collaborated to make the project, and then they went all out on the music video. Like, the odds I'm gonna be able to recreate a music video like that anytime soon are fairly slim.
It's pretty professional looking.
For those who haven't seen it, yeah, there's like coordinated stunt guys. They rented a limo. They rented out like a
Airplane
cafe. Yeah, they rented out an airplane hangar with a private jet that was in there, which was just nuts. Like, they went all out on the music video. There and yeah, it was a great pleasure to be a part of that. Unfortunately, as a small production studio, it's really hard to get noticed by the big guys. And the way that it works, unlike music as an independent creator, I can upload it to Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff for a small fee. But in order to get a movie on these massive distributors, you need to partner with like a Universal or a Sony or you name it. And so apparently the timeline for releasing independent movies like that is 4 to 5 years. So this was back in 2020. So we're hoping that Disguise the movie comes out towards the beginning to end of next year. Now, it's something that I don't have any part of, the release schedule, but I do make a couple cameos in the movie, which is cool too. And so yeah, that's Limo.
That is cool. So just correct me if I'm wrong, but at 5 you moved to Canada. At 13 you start working at Tim Hortons. At 17 you move to Edmonton. At 19 you buy a house. 17 you're also opening for your like childhood hero. You're starring in a movie and you have like a big budget music video. It seems like you've really fit a lot into the years, and you've done things. I don't know, you've just like had it such an interesting journey. What's next?
Well, thank you for that amazing summary. You definitely make my life sound a whole lot cooler than it's felt. I will say I did not star in the movie. I was just
Sure.
but was a big part of the soundtrack.
But that's just interesting. Actually, before I ask what's next, let me just understand. So you moved to Edmonton at 17, and like within the year you've kind of risen as a rap artist?
Yeah, so the Edmonton music scene, at the time I characterized it like there are 3 levels. There were like this is so mean, but like there were the nobodies, like nobody listens to them. They're at the bottom. They're just kind of like, yeah, I make music, but I'm not really no one really cared about them. They hadn't taken the time to perfect their craft or promote their brand yet.
Just a little like hobby maybe.
Yeah, exactly. There was like the middle tier, which I certainly fit in, and most of my friends fit in, which is like everybody kind of has their own unique fan base. Everybody is putting out music consistently, but there's no real there. Like, it's not, no label support, no like real listening base, no merch, no, like, you know what I mean? Still kind of in the formative years of being an artist, but a known player in the game nonetheless. And then the top echelon, which, those guys were just too cool to pull up, or if they did, like, they'd come to the show, but they aren't bobbing their heads, you know what I mean? They're not like interacting because they're like, if they went to Vancouver, they'd be nobodies, but they were the kings of Edmonton. So it's like, we got to be too cool for school. You know what I mean?
Understand.
But I've built a bit of a following now, being so young and then coming in. And one thing that I really learned at this time, like as a 17-year-old, was I went from feeling unrecognized and unappreciated as a high schooler to like being this completely new person in the city without my parents, without anybody I knew at
Just a
all.
huge change from high level to Edmonton.
It's a huge change, a tiny town to the capital city of Alberta. And so I just said, like, I kind of went the fake it till you make it route. I'm going to be so damn confident. I'm going to walk in the room like it doesn't matter that I'm a 17-year-old, that like none of y'all knew yesterday. Y'all know my name for sure. I'm the shit. Like it was all about bravado and confidence, and it just worked. Like I made a couple good connections early off.
Do you have a persona when you're in that role?
Yeah, so I used to Adnan. I didn't always perform under the stage name Adnan.
Okay.
It's not a stage name; it's my real name.
Yeah.
That's kind of the intent. But I used to go by AC,
Yeah, your
ACEY.
initials.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
my initials as well, AC. Yeah, exactly. And so that was another thing too. It was so easy for me to just be like, yeah, what up? I'm AC. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
forget about all that anxiety. Forget about like uncertainty. Forget about coming off as humble. AC walked in the house.
Do you feel like putting on that persona, eventually you just kind of became it a bit? Well, not in the like gangster way, but maybe in like the confident.
Yes, in the
way.
gangster way. That was
Oh,
the
that.
problem.
Okay.
The problem was, especially at an age like that, you're
is
not
true.
really paying attention to the things you're doing, the bad mistakes you're making. And so I definitely let my persona take over. I hung out with some really bad people and made some decisions that I'm not proud of. I never did anything like illegal. I don't want to paint a picture like I was some gun-toting gangbanger, but I certainly was hanging out with them. And it's like, as a 17-year-old, you don't recognize how much reputation precedes you for better or for worse. But that's a big part of transitioning away from AC and becoming Adnan, was because I realized my reputation needs to be won. I can't separate my actions as an artist versus as a man. Life doesn't work that way. I'm Adnan through and through, and that forced me to check my ego. It forced me to make sure that I was aware of the decisions that I was making, to conduct myself as a gentleman, to conduct myself as someone with intent. So yeah, you're right. That persona did take over, but not for the better.
You said like maybe that your childhood was a bit I don't want to say strict, but you mentioned that your parents like upheld a higher standard of behavior.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you moved to the big city, like you just have like no and correct me, but maybe throughout high school were you participating in like that kind of party scene? Were you a bit of an outsider is what I'm hearing. So when you moved to Edmonton, was it just like overwhelming and like maybe a bit of a classic story?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Yeah, like definitely, I grew up in a structured home. I wasn't really going to parties, at least not underage. Maybe grade 12, like grad parties, I was able to partake, but not before that. And my friends were something that my parents were always like, be aware of who you're around for reputation purposes. Now, as a resentful, dumb, 16, 17-year-old, you're like, screw you guys, I'm going to hang out with who I want. But literally, it was that. I got to the city and when you have such a wide array of decisions that can be made, and there's absolutely nobody behind you making sure you're making those right decisions, like it's so easy to just be dumb. Now I'm blessed that once I kind of awoke from that period of stupidity, like it's not like I ever cut ties with my family or anything, and I'm blessed with an incredibly supportive family. Like, I remember when I first started making music, there was a bit of apprehension because my mom found my notebook and it was full of all sorts of obscenity. I mean, this is like 14 years old. You can't there's no 14-year-old alive that's good at writing music, or at least in my opinion.
No.
And then when you consider hip hop, it's like, yeah, obviously I was writing all sorts of nonsense. So that notebook got thrown in the fire pit. But
that's a bit dramatic.
Well, but that's the
I
thing.
understand.
It's forged in flame as well. You know what I mean? You learn, okay, this is an unacceptable way for me to conduct myself, as made clear to me by my parents.
Yes.
And so now you would just adapt. It would, but then also my willingness to continue and to put more time in and to get better, it showed my parents that I cared about it, and so they supported me beyond that point. I don't want to paint that. I don't. The last thing I want anyone to leave this episode is thinking that I'm not eternally grateful for the
No.
things my parents have done. Yeah, but
So your early raps though, was that like an outlet for you? Because now I'm thinking you were probably describing like a lifestyle that you weren't living.
certainly,
Like you're like 14. I don't know exactly what you were writing about, but I imagine it was like more of a fantasy than anything else.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I was not speaking about the trenches, the real life experience I was going through. No, I was rapping like.
Was that like escapism for you, or was it more just like for fun?
I just so wanted to be cool. I so wanted to be accepted by the people around me. I felt like there was a disconnect between the way people treated me and the way I felt like I deserved to be treated, just baseline as a person. But it's like if me trying to be a kind, thoughtful person isn't enough to garner the respect of my peers, then I need to be capable of doing something. And it just so happens that a lot of the musical influences at that time were the black sheep. They're,
Right.
I am the outsider who doesn't fit in, and look at what I've built from that. And it just seemed like something that I could do myself. And it was a slow burn, but I would say like I dropped a few songs that people cared about, and that led me
It's
to.
also a steep takeoff when you move to Edmonton.
Yes, there was
And you release your first song when you're 15, and then when you're 17, you're opening up for like I don't know. It does seem like you had some immediate like rush of success.
yes and no. Like
Yeah.
there was gratification for sure. There was external validation for sure at that age. And then, like I said, I made some bad decisions when I was in Edmonton. And when COVID hit, it was not only an opportunity for me to rejoin the workforce, but it was an opportunity for me to separate myself from some of those bad decisions that I had made, from connections that probably would have been better off never having been made in the first place. And so I put music down for a couple years. Not that I stopped creating, but I stopped putting it out because I felt like I was a product of my decisions. Like I had done so, like music made me make bad decisions because I had to become famous. And the only way to become famous was by making these decisions,
Yeah.
It was a whole like justification thing. But around the time when I decided I wanted to come to university, I said, okay, well, I gotta get back to having something cool about me. And so I created a project called The Next Step. I took a week off work, and I spent one whole week writing, recording, mixing, and then actually, no, I didn't mix this, sorry. I sent that album down to Edmonton to get professionally studio engineered. Um, it's not that I couldn't have done it, it's that it would have been better doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do engineer all of my own stuff, but it's been so long that I'm very confident in the way that I'm doing it that I don't really need to outsource in the same way that I did at that age. But I put out the album, and yeah, nobody who had been listening to me beforehand, especially as AC, um, my old music, I had one song that got playlisted by Spotify. Now, I'm sure everybody does understand, but if you don't understand, without playlisting, nobody hears your songs.
Yeah.
Someone has to go out of their way to look for you. I had one song that got playlisted, and then from there, my streams, excuse me, they grew really quickly. My biggest song got 50,000 plays on Spotify.
And when was this story?
This is back when I was 17.
Okay.
So that's where that sort of, you're right, that sort of growth came when I was in Edmonton.
It's almost like luck. Is it almost luck to get playlisted? I don't understand.
Yeah, it kind of is. Like at this point, I'm not even optimistic that anybody listens to my music when I pitch it to playlisters, because it's been 3 years since I got any sort of. There's no sorry you weren't accepted. It's just like, no, you're not in any playlist.
Okay. Is it like TikTok where there's like an algorithm that's like just completely like AI and
It could be,
oh,
but from
okay.
my understanding is they look at your stats. Like, are you developing any sort of movement on your own? And then if they can see that typically, your fans are consistently listening to you, then they'll send your submission to an A&R, like a real person,
Oh.
who will listen to it and then decide, okay, is this worthy of being included on any playlist or anything? And, since I rebranded to Adnan and I started pursuing music in a way that I was aware of my reputation, that momentum just hasn't caught on yet. And I'm not a pessimistic person in practically any avenues in my life, so I'm not I'm not worried about being a hasn't been. At least not yet. I'm 22. Like, the odds that nothing gets better or nothing grows between now and the next 8 years of my life, let's say, I think are very slim. I'm really hopeful that people are going to find joy and find entertainment in my music. It's just, it's a slow burn.
What do you envision? Like, what's the ultimate goal? Is it to be like super famous, or do you just want like a core group of like modest followers, but like they're genuine fans and they like appreciate your skill?
You know, I think that I'm not so certain I look at it through either of those lenses. I mean, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. It would be absolutely incredible to blow up. It would be absolutely incredible. And I think that not uniquely, but I particularly believe that I would use my platform for good. I'm not someone pushing the idea of doing drugs or violence or gang activity or any of the typical motifs of music. And I think and I'd love to circle back to Project Pitch at some point too, but I know that as a man I would use my platform responsibly. So yeah, it would be freaking lovely if I blew up.
Yeah.
I think I have sort of a core base of people who appreciate what I do on my Snapchat, but I think that they appreciate me as an influencer and not as an artist.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect there that I'm still deeply appreciative. I mean, come on, like, how cool is it that people care about what I have going on? But certainly, yeah, I have ambitions of music being a bigger thing, but really, I just want to live a cool, balanced life that's full of adventure, full of respect, and full of excitement and entertainment. And so if that means that I graduate here at 25, whatever, and I still have 130 monthly listeners on Spotify, and I hit 30, and like the music never really took off, but I've developed my ability in the forestry industry, and now I'm having a young family, and I'm traveling around. Like, really, I want to be able to travel. I want to have impact on people's life, and I want to live life to the fullest. So for me right now, yeah, music seems like the best opportunity, and it's a deep passion of mine. But ultimately, like, if I'm on my deathbed and I spent 40 years making music and nobody really cared about it, but I've got a loving family around me, I know that I've put away enough money that, like, people are taken care of, and I had that adventure in my life, like, I'd be cool with that. I'm blessed to not need the extrinsic validation because I spent so many years searching for that and not getting it, that I'm kind of like, whatever, man, I'm doing this for me now. Does that make sense?
That is well put. My kind of view, like outlook on like artistic pursuits is that you almost feel like the benefits throughout the process. Like, is it something that relieves you to sit down, journal out some like lyrics, and do you feel like that in itself is just like your benefit? Like, even if you were just writing and recording songs to not even release, like that would already kind of fulfill you.
I think so. It does. Not even I think. Certainly it does.
Right.
It's again, it's that one thing that I feel like I uniquely do well, and not uniquely in the sense that nobody in the world can do it as well. But after this much time and effort and passion, like, every song I make is an extension of my soul in a way. So yeah, when I
Yeah.
make this music, even the songs that I don't release, they're still a part of me. So yeah, I would tend to agree that it is the process that really matters. It's just, you know, I would love to share it with you guys as
Yeah.
well, right?
No, I understand. If you had this like giant platform, what would you what would you hope to like use it for?
You know, I think that, and I think this is a great way to segue project pitch in as well, is that I really want people who feel like they can relate to be able to move past the self-imposed barriers that I had to get past. You know what I mean? That anxiety, that lack of comfort, that lack of awareness in your impact of other people, these are all things that I want to be able to bring to people's attention. Music and culture is ran by the kids. Like the kids, the youth decide what's next, and that's been the case for forever. And so really, it's not that I'm advertising to children or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But if I can inspire that next generation to be willing to take that step, same as I did, without making those same mistakes, that would be absolutely lovely. It's about believing in yourself. I really want to inspire that next generation. And that's a big part of what Project Pitch is. Project Pitch is a nonprofit that I've developed with a team of students that aims to help give people the tools necessary to overcome performance anxiety. Now, as we've spent so much time discussing, I've overcame my performance anxiety. I think that it's without a doubt clear to people who have communicated with me or seen me pitch and present that I do it well. And because that wasn't always the case, I feel qualified to be able to help people move forth. Now, we've done things to partner with, for example, we've partnered with the STFX Psychology Society to make sure that our itinerary is following, current practices, because anxiety is a real thing. This program could be potentially traumatic if we're going to just throw someone out there and be like,
well, you had an experience.
well, that's exactly it. We don't want to put people in that sort of experience. We want to give people the tools necessary in a comfortable environment to learn to get comfortable with pitching and presenting, and then gradually put them in a situation where now they are going to present to people.
How many students have you recruited?
We're looking for 16 students. Right now, we're shy of that. I think we're sitting at 6 or 7 recruits. There's a lot to there's a lot of different considerations. Firstly, this is the first ever time something like this has been introduced at STFX, so it's kind of hard to get people to buy in right when something starts. Secondly, Reading Week has been positioned at a time where we weren't able to get in classrooms and advertise to the students in the way that we would have liked to. Like, in the amount of time it took us to set up the whole thing, now it's time to advertise and promote, but the students aren't here. And then on Monday is when our first program session begins. And so that's the day everybody gets back from Reading Week. So we have the opportunity to work on our online marketing capabilities, is the way I'm going to put it, because unfortunately that in-person delivery isn't available. But it's about the impact. It's not really so much about the amount of people. I feel very confident that if we can get, 6 people to come in and get them to confront their performance anxiety, then that impact is going to have downstream effects. And then next year, early in 2025, when we launch Project Pitch again, that social proof will have drummed up interest. And the other thing is, it's tough to get people to self-identify. It's tough to get people to self-identify in the sense that if I put out a program that says, I'm trying to inspire people to step outside of their comfort zone and confront their performance anxiety, they need to be willing to say, I'm someone who suffers from performance anxiety. And that can be ostracizing, and so these are things that we're facing in trying to launch the program. But thankfully, I've been validated everywhere I look by people who think that this is an important thing for us to be helping people with. And so now it's just about conveying that message and getting it to the people who need it.
Interesting. If people were interested in signing up, how would they go about that?
So the best place right now would be, we've got an Instagram page, project.pitch.stfx. I have Here you go. If you're watching, here's the link right there. And then if you're not, I'll make sure that it's in the bio. But right now, we're focused on STFX students in particular. But our intent is, once we get a little bit of funding, it would be amazing to move this towards more Atlantic Canadian universities and see what sort of impact we can create. Because ultimately, this isn't about personal glory. It's about making things easier for the people who go through it.
Well, that's a nice way to put it. Do you think that's like the most important cause that you like is it that are taking up would be to like maybe like help people find confidence?
I think that it's probably the most honorable. I certainly think that as far as intent goes, yes, this is the most important thing I'm doing, but it's going to be in the eye of the beholder for certain. I mean, if somebody goes through the program, they're going to say, wow, like this is the most important thing Adnan's doing. He's given us specific value and we appreciate it. Whereas someone who isn't going through the program might say, well, this music has a personal impact on my life. It's so I think for me, yeah, it's the most significant thing I'm working on, but also significance is in the eye of the beholder in a way.
Okay, my last question. Obviously, you have plans for your time here at StFX. You said like you're 2 years in, two
Yeah.
years left. So you'll be kept busy by school and project picked. Actually, second last question, I should say, have you found it interesting that you struggled in high school, but in university you've like become a bit of a celebrity? It's a pretty big 180.
Yeah, yeah. And that was with intent. That was because I came into this environment as a mature student. I didn't just graduate high school and then join university. I graduated high school and then learned that this was the place that I wanted to be for myself. I got myself here. So in my first year coming back to university, I didn't rap. I created that album, The Next Step, but then when I got here, I didn't promote it. I didn't tell anybody I made music. I didn't record or release any music that year. But I just was extroverted. I was presenting myself in abundance. I wanted people to know who I was because precisely I didn't want to relive my high school experience.
But did
And
you feel like hesitation because like you didn't know the reception of your like rapping would be, and you kind of got up in front of your peers at like Piper's, and yeah, even I think saw you once like outside Mulrooney. Like you really put yourself in a vulnerable position.
yeah.
That
And
was a huge risk.
it was, thanks for recognizing that. Yeah, it was a pretty big risk. That was in the second year. Um, in first year, like I said, I really just wanted people to know who I was because I didn't want to be anonymous. But in second year, through the summer, I went back to Alberta. I worked for that same firm that I've just said earlier in the episode I wasn't particularly happy with, and I got super depressed that summer, and I started recording music again over that summer, and it just clicked that, people seem to like me for who I am at university. I'm in a different environment. People are resonating to my message. So why don't I actually give them something tangible in the form of music? And that's when I did exactly as you described. I put out a couple remix videos. I had a couple shows around campus. And then since then I've just been putting out music, putting out music. I dropped on my birthday last year an EP called Another Rapper, and that was my testing the waters as far as how interested are people in what I'm doing. And no, not a lot of people were super interested in it, but I was hooked. I was like, I'm having so much fun doing this. I'm going to keep rolling. And yeah, it's to the point where it's not hyperbole to say I'm a local celebrity. It sounds super arrogant, but I can't leave the house without people being like, "Oh, Adnan, hey!" And it's the coolest thing in the world. There's nothing more gratifying than that. So it's just, it's about, like I said, in people's eyes, I'm an influencer, but in my mind, I'm not that. I'm a
You're like an
rapper.
artist.
I'm an artist. So it's about converting that interest. But I'm super grateful for it regardless, you know?
That is interesting. I do think that you are a local celebrity. When I've been like telling people about this interview, and everyone's is interested, I think. And even, I don't know, you do have a lot of persona on campus. It's interesting how, it's interesting how much of a change up it is for you. And I'm curious, like, what that does to your identity, even. Like, you spend so long feeling like an outsider, you put on this persona, you break into a rap world, you're like almost immediately gratified, and then now you would never expect that there's like all this backstory if if you didn't know beforehand. Like, if you were just another STFX student, I would think you had always been this way. It's interesting that within you there's actually like a younger Adnan who is not treated this way and received this way.
You know, I think every artist just wants to be loved. And I think as well, I came into it with intent. And the other thing is, you want to make it look natural. I want people to be like, oh, this guy's always had it, because that makes it. No, sorry, I want to rephrase that. I'm glad now that people have the opportunity to hear that it always wasn't that way. But in presentation, in the way I convey myself, I want it to look as natural as possible. I want people to think this is who this guy really is. At one point, it used to be, yeah, I'm going to fake it till I make it. But now I'm at the point where, okay, this is who I am. And it's about, spreading that, I guess, spreading both the message that it's possible to do, and also spreading, my personal intent, so that.
Do you ever slip back? Like, are you ever insecure?
Yeah.
Or is it okay.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. There's, practically speaking, no time where I'm completely confident that what I'm doing is working and going well and everybody's receiving it. It's all about being aware of what's going on around me, but also having that sort of internal belief that I'm just going to do it regardless of how people feel. So yeah, like, I still get anxious. I'll still be slightly nervous when I'm about to perform or whatever, but when I actually get going, I always say 4/5 of presenting is presentation. And so I just need to present myself in a confident way, and everybody else is going to believe it too. And then beyond that last fifth is preparation. Get prepared and then present it like you just know you're going to knock it out the park. And people are going to believe it and resonate with it for sure.
Okay. My last question, just any note, is like, after STFX, like, what age do you want to have kids? Where do you want to live? Like, what do you visualize for yourself? You said you want to travel.
Yeah, for sure.
Where are you grounded, though?
Yeah, it's a good question. The States look really attractive to us. Us being myself and my girlfriend, because ultimately whatever decision, that's going to be a joint decision for sure. But we're looking at Montana, we're looking at Wyoming, we're looking at southern Alberta. So, yeah, that sort of strip of like Montana and Alberta would be amazing. Like, of course, there's a reality where, please everyone, forgive all the background noise. There's a reality where, maybe one day New York or LA or something like that. But realistically, having a family at around 30 and settling down would be beautiful, especially if debts were paid off and there's money in the bank. And yeah, I think that's probably when we'd be aiming to settle. But who knows? There's so many beautiful things, and life has changed so much for me in the last 5 years that I wouldn't presume to know what 8 years from now is going to look like.
Okay. Well, thank you, Adnan, for opening up about everything, and I hope that you shared things that you wanted to come across.
Thank you very much for interviewing me. This was an awesome experience, and hopefully people gained value from it.
Okay, I'll let you sign off. Okay.
Thanks, Zoey.
Absolutely, Adnan.